Welcome to Trulyfit, the online fitness marketplace connecting pros and clients through unique fitness business software.
Victor, thank you so much for joining the Trulyfit podcast. Why don't you give my audience and the listeners a little background on who you are and what you do in the health and wellness field?
Of course. Hi. Great to be on your show. My name is Victor. I have been in the health and wellness space probably for 30 years. So I'm a co-founder of Lightwater Scientific, which is what we're going to be talking about today, which is a company based around a new science that's been developing and called Deuterium depletion. So I've been a citizen scientist all my life and started out in my early 20s in culinary arts. Essentially, I figured out, as soon as I figured out that that doctors weren't going to make me better when I was sick as a teenager, I made some really important connections, and one of them was you are what you eat. So in my early 20s, I started the very first organic raw food restaurant in the United States, or at least I think one of them. And that led me on a path of inquiry into basically at that point, I was an armchair nutritionist. So I figured out what works for the human body, what worked for me, and how to replicate it and create optimal health for people. So I've been after this for a long time, this state of optimal health. So in 2004, I read an article called In Search of the Fountain of Youth, and it talked about this deuterium isotope, which I knew very little about. I only knew it from chemistry as something that's a version of hydrogen known as isotope, as an isotope. So, you have the periodic table, we all learn that in school, and then the very first element in the periodic table is hydrogen. And then at some point, we may or may not have learned that hydrogen has other forms. It has a form known as deuterium and a form known as tritium. These are all types of hydrogen. The only difference is the hydrogen that is 99.98% of the universe is the one that's an electron and a proton. And then deuterium has an extra neutron. So tritium we don't talk about too much because it barely exists unless you're conducting atomic blasts or testing. So we have this small amount of deuterium. And so in 2004, I read this article which pointed me in the direction that this may be something that we should take a look into because this could be an underlying cause of aging. And when you look at aging, as we understand it, it is a decrease in the amount of energy that we have, right? As our cells replicate, as our DNA replicates, a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy, each time it does it, there's less energy in the system. So essentially, as you get old, you have less energy, and that's essentially what we see in a mitochondrial level. When we start out very young, let's say a cell has thousands of mitochondria in it, maybe 20,000, 50,000, depending what cell it is. And that same cell, when you're a senior citizen, by the time you're a senior, that same cell has maybe 10% or less of the mitochondria that it did when you were younger. So mitochondria is responsible for making the energy in our body. And so we have this problem where we're slowly going down. After we peak, we go down. And so 1% a year after a certain age, some say 23, some say 26, 27, whatever it is, in our 20s into our mid 30s, we look at different biomarkers as we age, and we see that there's a gradual 1% on average decrease in cognitive ability, cardiovascular function, collagen. I mean, you just, it goes on and on and on, and that's aging. So I was looking at how do we intervene with this aging process and slow it down and make it more gradual. So being a citizen scientist, I look at everything. Not only do I study what comes out academically, but I just look at everything that I find because I'm a common researcher my entire life, seeking the truth, right? The truth is what works. And so what necessarily the truth is not necessarily or what they teach in school, but you get incomplete pictures, and then it's up to us to put that picture together completely. So that's what I've undertaken as my endeavor.
And you explained what deuterium is and where it comes from, but explain about the water component. How is this involved in water? What should the average person, if I drink a glass of water,
absolutely.
Am I expecting to have a lot of deuterium or a little deuterium? Do we need more of it or do we need less of it?
Okay, so I'll cut to the chase. We have too much deuterium on this planet right now. we have, so if you look at a liter of water, a liter of water is how many drops of water? Do you know? It's 20,000.
Wow.
So give or take. Out of that 20,000 drops, the drinking water on this planet has an average of 6 drops in that water. That's not H2O, right? Because we know water is H2O. That's how we learn it. But that component that has deuterium in it is HDO or HOD, where that hydrogen is replaced by its bigger and less useful cousin, deuterium. So 6 drops of that liter of water is this deuterium. And this gets into everything. This gets into our food. This gets into, it's prevalent on the planet. And so the theory goes, as part of this new science known as deuteronomics, which is endeavors to explain how deuterium is managed by the body and by eukaryotic or oxygen breathing cells. So the issue here is that when we evolved, we had less deuterium on this planet. So the ideal for our bodies is about 120, in that range or less, parts per million as measured. We measure it through saliva. You can measure breath vapor. You can measure any bodily fluid. But on average, you want to be in the 120 range. And the population of humanity, which is over I think it's close to 7 billion people now or more, it has a deuterium level of 150 on average. Some people have more, which makes them chronically ill and live a lot shorter. And some have a lot less, which is based on the geography in which they live, and now based on drinking water that we produce. So the goal is to lower your deuterium level. And when you lower it by 15 to 20, 25%, you experience something that cannot be experienced any other way, because what you're getting is a net energy benefit. By allowing more oxygen to be utilized, how does more oxygen get utilized? Well, when your ATP is healthier and when your mitochondria is healthy and produces more ATP more efficiently, and there's less damage on these motors, these mitochondrial motors, these factories, these power plants in our cells, then you have an optimization which increases the net energy that you have. So deuterium is the opposite, you could say, of its brother hydrogen, because hydrogen is the element that was responsible for creating all life on the planet. In fact, it's responsible for how stars shine. It's responsible for rocket ships and the fuel they use to get to outer space. And deuterium is the opposite. It's the gum that's stuck to your shoe. Now, there will be some controversy on this. There's no one has been able to challenge this when I say it's completely useless. Like, I don't really see any benefit unless you're using it as a neutron moderator in an atomic reaction. But in the body, deuterium, when you look at how the body or nature uses deuterium, you see that there's something very common in nature, and that's a hydrogen-carbon bond, right? We're carbon beings, we run on hydrogen. So in nature, you see carbon-hydrogen, and that's a bond. That's a very important bond that exhibits itself in so many molecules in nature, okay? And that hydrogen bond with carbon, when you replace that hydrogen with deuterium, then you have a deuterium carbon bond, right? Mm-hmm. And that disassociation of that bond is 9 times slower. So your body can't do the work that it needs to do, which happens this quick, very fast. It cannot jump those quantum gates like it does, which is a separate subject, when it has deuterium attached to it. So there's a 9 times slower disassociation with deuterium. So it slows us down. It slows down our biology. And when you slow down something and take away its energy, what happens? You get errors. You get errors in transcription. And that's why we look older as we get older, we look older too. So
are there objective studies about this? It sounds like you're citing a lot of things. Are you doing these studies on your own? Is your company doing these studies? Who does
I'm citing all the literature that's out there right now. Myself, I would only cite things that are qualitative, because I have not been able to quantify anything, because I'm not doing studies right now. But there's 60 plus years of literature, and a lot of it is phenomenal if you tap into it. So I've tried to put up all that into one cohesive place, where a depository where a lot of those studies exist. But the proof is in the pudding, because people that tell me that. So what we did is I and my partner, we knew about this deuterium problem. We looked at the science. We saw that it was legit. these look legit. And so we started this company and started making deuterium. Well, we started importing deuterium depleted water. And so
why import?
That's the whole other subject of how difficult it is to make this product.
Yeah,
okay?
That's what I was going to ask.
And
is it expensive to make?
We're doing it offshore. We're not doing it in the U.S. Now, I mean, there's this other subject matter. But the point is that we looked into this and we said, this might be something that is a higher level intervention. This may be an upstream solution. There's not many of these upstream type solutions where everything down of it benefits. So then we started in 2019 a company for importing and selling and marketing this water that works with the science, this concept that when you drink the water, you reduce the deuterium load in your body, you decrease that total deuterium burden in your body, and then you have more energy and other things, obviously, downstream of that. But the energy benefit is so profound because it manifests itself not like adrenal energy, right? It's a different type of, it's a mitochondrial energy. It's a source energy that because it's at the source, it plugs itself into places where this type of caloric energy that we derive daily doesn't go. So like repair, for one, and deep level kind of restructuring, because when the body is a self-healing organism, it's just missing that one component, energy.
How does one test themselves for this? Is it expensive to test yourself? I know you mentioned there's a few different ways. Whether
this whole lifestyle is I'll tell you, this whole lifestyle is expensive because we didn't think, nobody thought that we'd be paying $320 or more per month for water, but here we are. And that's because it's difficult to produce. It takes a lot of energy, and to remove that component, because you're separating water from water. It's like H2O from H2O. Yeah. So we make a small amount of this water available for people, and in the United States, and you can test your deuterium. It's a $200 test. You can test your saliva. You can test your water too. Maybe you live somewhere in the mountains of Idaho and you're really curious to see if your water is like anything special. It is, if you're there. And because there's certain places on the planet where you're going to find 15 to 20% lower deuterium than the rest of us are drinking. And when you look at the populations of those areas, you see that they're far healthier. They're like superior in health compared to people that are living coastally. And that's because the net energy benefit over time. This is a delta over time that really makes a big difference. So what people do is they get on the program, and then in 3 months, 2 to 3 months, you could drop your deuterium levels into the 120 ppm range or lower.
Why doesn't the general public know more about this, do you think?
It hasn't been available for very long at all. If you try to buy a liter of deuterium depleted water 15 years ago, you would pay $1,000. It's just wasn't available. And the science was available, and the knowledge of deuterium, even as far back as 1953, when they started investigating deuterium, American scientists concluded, and I quote, incompatible with life. So we have a little bit of this in us. We have maybe a gram and a half. Maybe 1 gram to 2 grams in a human body. But when you compare it to how much of the basic nutrients that we have, that we need for life, like glucose, magnesium, potassium, calcium, you have a lot more, 5 times or more deuterium, because it's bound to everything. And when it gets into our motors, it jams them up. It causes them to stutter. No energy is produced. It slows us down. So we recognize this problem, and just because you know about a problem doesn't mean it's going to get popular, because you have to have a solution. And so we have a solution. Like I said, it's expensive. It's something you do continuously, but even a little bit goes a long way in terms of benefit. So
do you think the larger beverage and water companies will eventually take this on, or do you think it's just too pricey for them right now? Why do you think they're involved in this process?
Maybe in a decade or so, because for one, you can't make much of it. That you can't. It's not that interesting to large, that kind of big business, because you just can't make that much of it. Period. We have a big factory of ours, and we don't make that much. We make enough for a few thousand people. Consider that you want to change the world with giving this water to millions of people. You'd be better off towing an iceberg from Antarctica that has water that's 89 parts per million, which is an anomaly on this planet, but it's phenomenally good for health. But in the future, I think better technologies will come out, because a small market that we've started now stimulates innovation, and somebody will create, maybe it could be us, somebody will create a way to do it that's more economical. This water will be cheaper to produce. Certainly it takes a while for things to get known about. It has to be validated, or at least considered, and by mainstream science. And so this is all starting right now. We're very new on this. It's very exciting, because I lecture to a lot of doctors, and they can't argue against it, because it's a mechanical problem. See, this has been known about for 60 plus years, but it wasn't until 2007 that Dr. Abdullah Olgun actually did the work and discovered, he may be nominated for a Nobel Prize one day, discovered how deuterium damages, specifically how it damages the mitochondria in these motors known as ATP synthase motors, which is the smallest motor in nature. It's nanoscopic, and it spins close to 9,000 RPM, and it uses hydrogen protons to spin these motors, the energy currents body, and create metabolic water, which is already 70% deuterium depleted. So he discovered the mechanical deuterium damaged motor, and it is a mechanical problem. It's too big for it. It's a square peg in a round hole. Every 15 seconds, that motors, these trillions of motors that we have in our bodies that producing our energies, working overtime, okay, they are impinged upon by, instead of a proton, by a proton-neutron pair, which is a deuteron. And this causes the motor to stutter, break down, and this is one of the reasons why we age. It's not the only reason we age, but I think we've discovered something so profound, it's going to go down as one of the greatest discoveries in biology, is this deuterium problem. And it was overlooked because when you look at it, it doesn't seem like much. Like I said, 6 drops in 20,000. But when you look at it deeper, like Dr. Olgun did, or Dr. Borosh, who coined the term deuteronomics and is the leading authority in the world on this new science, this new biochemistry, peer-reviewed no less, and you start seeing things that fill in a lot of answers to questions that didn't have any. And when you start considering deuterium in biochemistry, a lot of those gaps, a lot of those missing links get filled in. So it's very exciting.
Is the profile changed to this water? Meaning, does the taste or the viscosity or anything change when you take this out?
The only difference in our water is, well, there's a few differences, but people can replicate those. But what makes our water different is it's known as super deuterium depleted water, super light water, meaning that it's over 90% reduced in deuterium. So we make a 94 and a 97% reduced water, which is 10 or 5 ppm. Now, some will say that our water does taste very good. It's a very interesting anomaly, because our water is distilled water for all intents and purposes. We don't add minerals back into it. We let you do that. So we have a water that's so pure, it tests at 2 megaohms, which is pure. This is like lab grade water, meaning it has no ionic activity, meaning you can't even measure the pH of it, because there's no minerals in there to measure pH with. So it's completely inert water. Typically, when you have such lab grade pure water, it doesn't taste very good. But for some reason, our water tastes great. It really does taste phenomenal. And it tastes very pure, very light. But the only difference, really, when you consider our water and other waters, other than being its purity, which anybody can replicate, you cannot replicate the fact that it has 94 to 97% less deuterium. And that's the difference that we're going for. Because there's a mechanism known as hydrogen exchange. When you drink water, you expel water through sweat, breath vapor, urine. When you put in water that has less deuterium, you will let go of some of your deuterium. So about half a ppm or 1 ppm per day, roughly. So that's the whole reason why you drink the water, because through the mechanism of hydrogen exchange, you lower your deuterium level. And that's the intervention here that we're talking about. This is the big biohack that is the crown on your Christmas tree. It really is. Everything else is just downstream of it, because there's nothing else that creates a net energy benefit. All food will eventually will be a deficit. So this is why we age. We're constantly in a state of ongoing entropy, right? Everything that spins up has to eventually spin down. And that's the entropy part, which we don't really care for too much. So we want to become superconductors. We want to have no decay of spin ever. We want to be coherent superconducting beings. And in order to do that, we have to keep our energy levels up. Keep those energy levels up, keep contaminants from coming in. And this is the oldest, widest contaminant that we have on this planet. It's a natural contaminant. It's known as deuterium. Disguised as HDO.
They figured out why the deuterium levels, let's say in Idaho, are less in the water than maybe in New Jersey? Is it elevation? Is it time? Is it people?
It's the hydrological cycle. It's the condensation cycle, evaporation condensation cycle, and there's a little complexity to it, which allows for a reduction of deuterium in places that are away from the hydrological cycle of the ocean. So the eastern slope of the Sierras, you're going to get maybe almost 10% lower deuterium than you will on the coast. So on the western slope, it won't be the same because it's closer to that weather pattern. You're also going to have lower deuterium based on elevation and latitude, because those condensation, precipitation, evaporation cycles will be magnified or amplified. And that also is better removing a little bit of deuterium. So this was first discovered in the early 1950s. And then, so in the 50s, there was these Siberian scientists, these Russian scientists, Soviet scientists at the time. They were trying to figure out why these populations, these two Siberian populations, they were primarily Eskimos, essentially, the Altaians and the Yakutians, why they had so many more centenarians, people that live over 100 years, than anywhere else in Europe. They had 324 per 1 million. And everywhere else, it's like, 5 to 20, okay? Like, why these people, they live like Eskimos, why do they, first of all, not have any health problems that modern Western health problems, but they also live over 100 very easily, at least quite a few of them in their population. And they were trying to figure out why. And they honed in on this deuterium problem because they saw that the water that they were drinking was 60% lower in deuterium. And this is what set this whole thing off, this whole bit of inquiry. And they published in 1961. And this is from that time that we know that the reduction of deuterium in your body will increase your energy, and the accumulation of deuterium will do the opposite. It will slow you down.
Do you have any competitors, and do you expect to down the road have competitors, because it seems like such a up and coming niche market?
There's 4 factories that can produce this right now. Nobody in the U.S. We're in the process of building a factory in the United States, but right now we have 3 competitors. One is a Chinese competitor that brings in their water into the U.S. and markets it here. And then there's a Hungarian water and a Romania, and then ours. So I'm friends with most of them. It's not like it's competition, because there's just not enough. If everybody woke up tomorrow and said, "Oh my God, I get it. This is huge." Where would you get it? Everybody together has enough water for 10,000 people, if that. Okay. So if everybody woke up tomorrow and said, "I want to deplete my deuterium, where can I get this water?" After that small amount and how many culturally creative, biohacking type athletic people involved with their own health do you have in the United States? It's 25 million or so. So you could, it would be a radical shift. And I think this is one of those things that's coming in at this time of great shift in human consciousness, technology, everything. This is a real long-term strategy. It's here now, just landed, and it's growing. So we've just planted the seeds now, and it's very exciting because it's only been 3 years that we've actually been commercially making this available to people, where they can not only feel a benefit short term, but actually be on it for a number of years and see what the long-term benefit is, because this is a lot of this is unpaved territory. This is all very new because it's mostly existed in theory up until ourselves and our small number of competitors actually started making this available for people.
Is the goal to focus on the technological component and to make this, let's say 30 years from now, actually available to a large swath of people?
Absolutely. Yeah. The technology is a big piece here. Yeah, because what we're doing right now is we're copying the hydrological cycle inside a factory, and we're amplifying it, right? But that's how we're removing the deuterium or the HDO, the semi-heavy water, from the H2O water is through this mechanical process. You have these columns that are 40 feet tall, and then they have water going up and down, and then you pull a little bit off at the top that's has less deuterium. So I think it's very exciting because I put this challenge out to everybody I talk to, at least in scientific circles, and I tell them, hey, maybe I make an analogy that you and I are. It's 1860, and you and I are sitting around a campfire talking about the fact that sometime in the future somebody's going to invent the light bulb. We haven't seen the light bulb yet, but we know it's close because we have other things that point to it. So now we have the water, and we have the technology to do it. We don't have it for the whole planet yet, but we're close, right? Somebody is going to come along. Maybe they're not born yet. Maybe they already are. Maybe it's you. Maybe it's me. But we'll figure out a way. One, it'll get accepted in mainstream science. Two, it'll get accepted as a household where people will know that there's a new standard of water purity, because that's really all it is here. It's a new standard in the purity of water. We figured out in last century that, we got to remove arsenic from water. We have to remove chlorine. It's best to remove particulate matter. It's not too good for us. So it's only in the last 50 years that we have reverse osmosis filtration. By the way, my partner Robert Slovak is one of the pioneers of reverse osmosis. Now again, second round around the merry-go-round with deuterium depletion and light water. So what we have here is a new standard of water purity. It's just not everybody has been able to come up to it yet. In fact, it's very difficult to come up to the standard. But when you incorporate this standard into your body, into your lifestyle, you benefit immensely, incredibly. I mean, I can attest to that just with my own testimonial. But with the people that drink light water over a period of time, or any deuterium depleted water, or even I'll go even further to say that don't even consume any deuterium depleted water, but observe a deuterium depleted lifestyle, they also benefit. So it's this deuterium depletion concept that people need to get familiar with and understand how less is more.
Have you or anyone done a study where they just take, let's say, a bottle of Avian water, a bottle of Dasani, and the tap water, and tested the deuterium levels, and is one more than the other in your average glass of water?
So we've done those tests. Others have done those tests where basically you see what the deuterium level is of all table waters, and for that matter, all municipal water. That's public information. They do test the deuterium level of most municipal water, and so that's widely available. And there's really no commercially available water out there that's below 140. I would say 135 even. Maybe you can get a glacial water that's 135 parts per million, and certain parts of the world you will find you can get water it's an 120 ppm range, but you'll have to hike to those places. Yeah.
Well, tell my audience a little bit about where they can find more about light water specifically, whether it is your website, whether they really are interested in buying it, or maybe they want to reach out to you specifically or someone in your company because they have more questions concerning this.
Yeah, I would. Here's what I would suggest. You go to our website, drinklightwater.com, LITEWATER, and it's called light water because we put it on the scale compared to a equal amount of regular water. You'll see that it's slightly lighter because there's no deuterium in it. But familiarize yourself with information on drinklightwater.com and download the free deuterium guide. That's really good, quick information. You can see if this is what it is and if it's for you, and what it involves to be successful at the strategy or deuterium depletion in general. And I do want to say one more thing, because in the beginning of the podcast you mentioned that you have a lot of people listening that are trainers and athletes and so forth. There was one study which I honed in on, which is phenomenal. And this is one that we are going to recreate here, is that after 30 days on deuterium depletion, this study showed, now it used athletes and weekend warriors, non-athletic people as well. Mm-hmm. And there was a study it was done with 6 people, and there was a group that drank slightly deuterium depleted water. There's another group that drank double the deuterium depleted water, and a group that drank just regular water. And the group that for 30 days drank deuterium depleted water, where they were able to get themselves down, probably, this isn't the study, but probably to a level that was between the 100 and 125 ppm range. It showed that they had, that after 30 days on deuterium depletion, they were able to utilize they were able to, how do I say this? They were able to use half the oxygen to produce the same amount of effort.
Wow.
So they basically utilized their oxygen. They basically doubled their body's, how their body uses their oxygen, doubled its efficiency. And so when I read this study originally years ago, it made me think of something, because, when you look at these alpine climbers and they climb Mount Everest, they have to do it with supplemental oxygen. Mm-hmm. And the Sherpas that live there don't. They can go up and down all day long to the top of Mount Everest, which is supposed to be impossible because of the lack of oxygen up there, or the very thin atmosphere. But they can go up there without supplemental oxygen. And the reason they can is because the base camp of Mount Everest, the water there is 125 parts per million. So when a Westerner acclimates there for a few months or more, and they practice a keto diet, they too can summit Mount Everest without supplemental oxygen, because of this study that shows that when you are deuterium depleted, you need half the amount of oxygen to perform the same amount of work. So that one I want to replicate here, because that can change sports. It's like, yeah. And for me, I'm 50, and my cardio is just, for somebody that sits mostly in front of a computer, my cardio is like off the charts. It's just phenomenal, and it's all because of it's deuterium depletion and oxygen strategies. But yeah, this is a upscale intervention. So if you want to increase your performance, like if you're stuck somewhere performance-wise, decrease your deuterium a little bit and tell me what happened.
The science seems amazing. I myself am going to read more about it. Victor of Lifewater Science. Lightwater Science.
L-I-T-E.
I'm going to list all the links below, and anything else. If you have anything else to say to the audience, please go for it here.
Drinklightwater.com. Thank you so much for having me on your podcast.
Thank you, Victor.